Hey, what is up guys, how are we doing, and welcome back to a very special video. As everyone's been asking for ages, what video software do I use? And most people will say Premiere, but I use DaVinci Resolve, and I'm so passionate about it because it's not only completely free, but it supports 4K video, and it's pretty much the best color grading software out there. Now this video has been really helpfully sponsored by the lovely guys over at Sandisk, who have sent me out some of their really cool tech, including the UHSII SD card, and I've been using this along with one of their super fast readers, and it's absolutely ridiculous just how quickly you can import footage, but more on that later. Whenever you open DaVinci Resolve, this is the screen you'll be greeted with. It's a list of your projects that you've recently worked on, or if you don't have any projects, then it will just say Untitled Project. And something that is really useful is that if you come over here to your database, and then you click on the backup button and then choose somewhere, ideally on a portable location, then this is the way you would sort of take this with you if you wanted to go to a different computer or just take it with you on a laptop and things like that. When you open up a new project, this is what the window will look like. It's completely blank. It is a blank editor. And you've got a few different panes here. You've got the media screen, and I'm very rarely here, but this is what you will use to import your footage. We'll come back here in a second. The edit screen, which is where you'll spend most of your time. You've got the timeline down here. You've got your footage that will appear here on the left. Everything can be resized by the way, so you can get this exactly how you want. You can save your layouts. If you change your screen resolution, it all adapts. It's all pretty good. This is where you will drag your footage to select in and out points. So if you're filming something, you should normally film more footage than you need and then cut it down to size. This is where your actual finished product, if you like, or your work in progress will play back. And then when you go to the color tab, this won't show anything because we haven't added any footage yet. This is where you'll do all your color grading, and this is where it looks really complicated, especially if you've never used anything like this before. And in some ways it is definitely quite complicated, but in others it's actually quite straightforward. Best way to sort of learn this is going to be to just have a play around and just get the footage to look a little bit different every time, and you'll get better and better. This is the Fairlight audio editor, which is fairly self-explanatory. This is if you want to customize your audio. I don't really use this much because there are tools baked into the edit screen, and this screen is actually quite new. It's in the latest version of Resolve. And then finally we have Deliver, which is where you will want to actually deliver your footage. So this is where you'll make the presets for your files. So I have two. I've got a 21:9 one and then a YouTube 16:9 4K one. This is where you'll render out all your footage, make sure you've got it set up in the formats, codecs, and resolution and frame rate and things like that. And then you'll click the render button and then it will start everything off for you. So that's pretty much an overview of the editor and its layout. But in terms of actually getting started, all I will do is go to Windows Explorer. I'll find my footage, which is always on a Sandisk UHSII drive. So this is one of their super fast Extreme Pro SD cards, and as you will see once I get through this horrific folder structure from Sony, look at that, that's absolutely appalling. Your files are all located here, and all I need to do is just select some of these. I then move them to my even faster PCIe SSD, which is camera files here. We create a new folder called project, I don't know, doesn't really matter. Import them in, and you'll see that they will import in a speed of about 230-ish megabytes a second, which is absolutely insane. A standard SD card caps out at around about 60, around about 80, but that's for a UHS-I card. If you have something slower, then it's going to be even slower. So normally my files are around about 50 gigs, so you can see just how much time this saves me, and when you're doing it every day, it's an absolute godsend. If you do want to edit on the go as well, you can use a external SSD. So I've got a Sandisk external SSD here, and again, this is really useful if you want to edit on the go. So if you sort of pair this with a portable database like we showed you earlier, then this is great for things like shows. This is how I worked at CES, IFA. If you've got a laptop, chances are it doesn't have tons and tons of storage. Having an external SSD is a great way to actually work if you're going to do that. Once your files are all copied across and you're ready to go, then you can just select your files and then drag them straight into the edit screen. This is the way I work because it's shorter, but if you're doing a very big project, then I would suggest that you instead put them in the media tab and then sort of work out and make sure you got everything collated before you start. As I work with daily projects, it's a lot easier for me. Now, when you get your footage, you see it's all nicely displayed here. And if you go into the settings, which is done by this little cog down here, you'll see what your timeline frame rate is. And when you drag a clip in and it doesn't match that frame rate, as long as it's the first clip you drag into your timeline, it will come up with a little pop-up and it will say, are you sure this is the frame rate you want? Do you want to match it to your clip? Which in almost all cases you want to say yes. You do not want to be working with a timeline frame rate that is not the same as your footage frame rate. So you can see here mine is 29.97, and because I've filmed this twice, it's locked at the moment, and you do not want it to lock at the wrong frame rate. But you should be alright, because it will tell you when you drag something into the clip here if it's wrong. But do be very careful about this, because there has been one project I've worked on where it's been completely ruined by the fact that the frame rate was completely wrong. If your production is something like mine, you might have an A camera, in which case I have this one clip here. You can drag it into the timeline, and then you'll see it will appear. But the issue is, it is just one big file, and obviously the point is we need to edit this down into something we can actually use. There's a few ways of doing this. We can either select the clip from the left hand side, and then this little handle icon appears, and then you can drag this, and this will make the clip larger or smaller. Or alternatively, you can get the clip in the first place, which is this one, and then you can create in and out points. And this is really useful for adding B-roll over different shots, because you can find where you want the clip. So let's say you want to go here, we press the I hotkey, so just I, and that will then create an in point, or I for in. And then if we want to create an out point, so the point at which the clip will finish, then have a guess what we press. We press O, O for out. And now we have our clip, and we can either drag this into the timeline. You can see by default it will override anything you've already got here. You can drag it into different tracks, because at the moment we've just got one video track and one audio track, but then we can create different tracks if we want to have a more complex video production. Or alternatively, something that I do with my B-roll is I can just click the video button here and then drag the clip, and then it will only drag the video. Likewise, if you only want the audio from a clip, you can do that and then drag it down to the timeline. If you're creating audio with mono microphones, so if you've just got one microphone, then a common mistake people make is that they will have a stereo track, whereas what you want to do is you want to change the track type to mono, and then this will have it separated into two different channels when it gets output. To navigate the timeline, it's actually quite straightforward. So you'll see that my waveform down here is actually quite representative of the video that I've got. So I want to find where I start talking, and you can see by looking at the video track, it's probably going to be around about here. But if I click there, I've already started what I'm trying to do. So the best way of finding out where your actual production starts, really, if you're doing anything that involves people talking, is to look at the waveform. You want to make sure that the audio is as loud as possible, really, without clipping. So if we drag it too far, you'll see that we've got this white highlight, and that means that it's going to clip. And to drag and select to this point, we do just that. We grab the clip from the left hand side, and then this handle icon appears, and then we just drag that forward until we get the point where I want to start. So I'm sitting down here, I've started talking. So in this particular instance, I want me coming in to the frame. So we'll start there. I'll then drag this point to the start of our clip, and I'll mute myself because otherwise you'll hear me twice, and then we hit the play button, and then you see we've now got the start of our production, and we can continue doing what we need to do. To fix this bit of audio, there's a few different ways of doing it. We can either customize the audio itself by holding down the Alt key, clicking on the audio bar at the top, and then creating like a, what's the best way of describing it? We create 4 points, and then we can actually just drag this point down, and then you'll see the audio then curves downwards for that loud bit, and then curves back up for the quieter bits. Now, to cut a jump cut, if you like, then all we need to do is press the B tool, which is the blade tool, and then just click where you want to cut the video, and then you can drag forward to the next point where maybe you've started talking. I think I refilmed that bit twice because I didn't do it properly. So I'm going to get it just before I start talking, and when I press the space bar, you'll see it then cuts to the next point. Nice and simple. That is the basics of editing, really. If you've got multiple things, especially if you've just got one video track, that is how you're going to do it. If you want this to be a little bit more fancy, let's say, then what you can do, rather than just having a straight jump cut, is you can add in a transition. And the easiest way of doing this is right-clicking between the two clips and then selecting a cross dissolve. That's what you're probably used to seeing on YouTube. But the problem is, it doesn't always look that great, to be honest, especially when you're dealing with people. But if you don't want a cross dissolve, you say, well, you go into the effects library, which is over here. And this is where we've got video, audio transitions, titles, so that's text, all of that stuff. And you can see the default we've got is a cross dissolve down here, and I think you can change this. Yeah, set as standard transition. If you right click, set as standard transition, then this is what, when you right click, it will change to. So let's say we want the diamond iris. Let's change that to the standard transition. There it is, it pops up. And you'll notice that we see 7, 15, 30, and 60 frame transition. What does that mean? Well, that is relevant to your frame rate. So a 30 frame diamond iris on a 30 frames a second production would be a 1 second transition, so this is all relative to your frame rate. So we change it to that, boom, there we have a new transition. But of course we don't have to use the default one, you can change it to whatever you like, and you can even add extras in with OpenFX, I think, as well. If we want to change that further, then there's this thing called the inspector, and if we click on the transition, you'll see then we get some stuff that we can change. So we maybe want to do a Valentine's Day transition, add a bit of a border, add an offset, ease it in. I don't know. Point is, you can change all of this stuff in the inspector. And this isn't just limited to transitions. It doesn't matter what you click on it. This is where you will be able to change everything. And there's some really powerful stuff you can do. And it's all relative to what you click on. So audio, video, doesn't matter. Your inspector will give you all the information about the clips, and this is how you'll create your basic edits. So if you want to zoom in, you can zoom in. If you want to zoom out, you can zoom out, and so forward. The other cool thing to do is if you want to sort of ease in over time, you can either use what they call the dynamic zoom function, but I find it's easier and I've got more precision if I click this little button here. Now this is the keyframe button, so if you tick this box, then you move on to here, and then you click it again. We've now got 2 points. You see, so we've got left and right. You can create as many of these as you want. And then if we change this one, so back to where we were, so 100%, and then we click the play button, you will see that it slowly moves out. And this is really powerful because it can make some really static footage seem that little bit more interesting, and especially when you add effects like rotate and stuff like this, it can actually make it really simple. And I didn't mean simple, it can make it look a lot more advanced, even though it is quite simple. To save a project, you just do your usuals, Control S. So this one, let's just call test project. And we're pretty much ready to go. If you do want to add in any text as well, then our titles are over here, just drag them in. And then likewise, your inspector is where you've got all your information. So instead of typing test, let's type in bananas, because that sounds a lot more interesting. You can change the font, it can be anything you want, it doesn't just have to be one of the default ones. Anything that you've installed on your computer will appear. And likewise, you can change all of these effects, you can add a background, all of this stuff. Drop shadow is a really nice one that I think you should pretty much always use. Add a background, you can have them like pop in, so you can create effects that pop in like that. Loads of cool stuff. And again, you can expand this with OpenFX if you want more stuff. So this is what my production looks like at the beginning. I'll add an intro and stuff like this. But rather than just boring you by keep doing the same edits, I'm going to show you my most recent project that I completed, which is the Corsair February giveaway, which is still open if you do want to go and check that one out. And you will see that everything looks a bit funny. I've got this horrible red text, red icons. What's all this all about? Panic. If you click it, it says media offline. What does this mean? Well, this doesn't mean that all is lost. This just means that your computer can't find the media. It's either gone, been deleted, or in my case, it's been moved to a different location. So to show you how to fix this, all you need to do is go into your media pool. You need to find your clips that are missing, and assuming they're in the same place, you can actually group them together. And you click down here, change source folder. So you click the change source folder, and then you can see where it thinks your files are, and you can actually go in and you can find them. So in my case, I've just changed the folder. Where is it? It is in camera files, and then it is in project, I believe now. So we click the change button, and magically they will reappear. So if you ever find that your files have gone, or you've moved them maybe across to a NAS, which is something that I do, then you can still use the same projects. You just need to relocate them if you like. So my project begins with an intro, like so. As you will know, I will mute the audio because that will get very annoying. And then it goes straight into just a straight cut, you see? Bang, there it is, and I'm in. But you'll notice that while I'm only using one track for the first few sections, I've added a few different effects, like the zoom in for effect, and again, if you need a reminder, I've done that in Inspector. You can also zoom in, by the way, using these tools. So here you've got transform, crop, dynamic zoom, and OpenFX overlay. I only tend to use the transform one, as this is just a more visual representation of what's going on. So if you then move it to there, you'll see that I've zoomed out, and if I drag it, I've zoomed in. Really easy, and it's just a good way of sort of visually representing it rather than just relying on the tools on the right. You can see that I've now gone into a separate video track, and here I've just used a static image, and I've used the keyframing effect. There it is, keyframing effect, so that it moves on between these different clips. So if I play this, you'll see that a static image becomes more interesting. I've then used a cross dissolve to sort of mask some of the inaccuracy, then goes straight cut back, and then straight cut back into sort of more footage, all done in the same way. And then my B-roll is just B-roll, and I'm just working on different tracks. So if I wanted to add something on top of this, you can see I'd use video 3, 4, and then 5. So the max I would ever use is 5, but for most productions, I'd be very surprised if you sort of use more than 2 or 3. But it's going to be entirely dependent on what you use, really. I've added 2 audio tracks, so I can sort of mix this in and make it look a little bit cleaner and just have more control rather than using a dissolve. I've changed the levels of the audio, I've stepped it down with this particular beat, and it's all, you know, fairly straightforward. I mean, I don't use all of the tools. For example, up here, where we've got this video track, if we want to add this particular clip in, let's say, then all I would need to do is, it's in B-roll, I think. No, it's not. Where is this clip? Let's say I want this. Let's say I want this particular clip here. So we're selecting another in point, another out point, and then we can either drag it in, but then you'll see it gets all of these audio tracks in as well. So I would just drag my clip in like this, overlay it, and then it would go straight across into this particular clip. But if you want to be more advanced, then once you've selected it, you can use these hotkeys to do different things. So if your insert clip is F9, you've got overwrite clip is F10, replace clip is F11. So do have a play around with these tools. They will do different things. A couple of other things I probably should mention before we show you how to actually render your finished product is that these things sometimes catch people out. You've got here the snapping tool, or the snapping toggle I should say, and then linked selection. And these by default are both on. You can toggle them on or off, or use the hotkeys, which is N for snapping, or Control, Shift and L for linked selection. What do these mean? Well, you'll probably notice if one of these is off because things will start to misbehave. It won't be quite so natural. Snapping, if you turn this off, so you see it's now gone off, and then we drag this along, you'll see that it's nice and smooth. We can put it anywhere that we want. Whereas if I press N, you'll see that it now snaps to the point where you'd want it to go. So if you want to put this directly after this clip, then it snaps into place. Whereas if we press N, chances are you might look at that and think, right, that's good. But then when we play that back, if I get rid of these fades, which you can do by just clicking the end of clips and then dragging them, you'll see that it then would go black. And we might not notice that, especially if we're working sort of quickly and in a hurry. So snapping is a good thing to leave on unless you really want that precision control for maybe putting B-roll or something over your clips. Then link selection, this dictates whether you're selecting a group or just one thing. So if I click on this, you'll see in default it's got the audio and the video, which is what you'd expect. Whereas if we press Control, Alt and L, or you press this button here, I didn't mean Control Alt L, you press Control Shift L, then now you'll see that I'm only selecting this bit of video. you see the audio track is not selected. Whereas if I group these up by pressing Ctrl Shift and L, because I've probably just undone that, and then retick this, you'll see that the whole thing moves as one. Again, taking that off, you'll see that it now becomes out of sync, and you get this out of sync marker. If you do want to group multiple things, so let's say this we know it's always going to be together, Control, Alt and L, and then this is now one unit that moves, turn off the link selection, and it's all now out of sync. You can see, and you're only moving one thing. And if you want to grade your clips, which is a bit advanced, I'll show you a brief bit about what I do, but that's probably a video for a different day. You click on the color tab, and you've got all these different options here. You've got these different windows, so you've got curves, you've got the qualifier, you've got windows. What do all of these things mean? If you do want to stabilize some clips, by the way, it's actually here. You go to the color tab, click on tracker, window, stabilizer. Stabilize. That's all we need to do. Nice and simple. It works most of the time. Sometimes it's a little bit funny. But this is your grading screen, so if you make any adjustments, then it will change the way your clip appears. You can press Shift and F, and that will make that screen a little bit bigger for you if you want to see what you're doing. I don't grade my clips too heavily, but if you do, you can layer different nodes, they're called, by pressing Alt and S, and then these are two different grading nodes. So I won't go too much into how it all works, but just have a play around with the wheels to make sure that your clip sort of looks the way you want it. Obviously this is going to be extreme, you're never actually going to go all the way out there, but subtle sort of curves towards the blue side is what I tend to do. So here's one that I'm not blurring out. I press Shift and D, that disables the grade, and you can see it's very subtle. If you look around this sort of area, you can see it's just got a slight blue tinge to it, which is a bit subtle, but it sort of helps it look a bit nicer to your brain, I think. You can increase the shadows, decrease the shadows, all of the sort of stuff, if you like, you're doing Instagram, you can do here. It will take you a while to get the hang of it, I'm not going to lie. I tend to make a slight curve just to bring the shadows down and bring the highlights up. But yeah, if you want a video on grading, I can do that, but that is definitely a video for a different day. When it comes to delivering your piece though, you'll see we have our nice timeline here, and you can play it back if you want to check that it's all right. But all we need to do is just essentially give it a name. So here I'm calling it Untitled. You need to select a preset or make your own. So I've made my own, which is YouTube 30 frames a second 4K, which changes it to the parameters that I've set. The main things really is that if you're uploading to YouTube, which you probably are, you want to do QuickTime H.264, but you can upload it in any of these formats in any different codec that they support. So plenty of options here. You can do it in ProRes, all of this stuff. Frame rate, this is dependent on the frame rate of your production, so this is why it's so important to get that right in the first place. And then restrict to is a useful thing. My files out the camera are 100,000 megabits, kilobits a second. So I don't want it to be on best because it would be a huge file. I restrict this to 40,000. But if you select the YouTube 1080p preset, you'll see that's lowered for you. The only thing to be aware of is if you're working in 4K and it defaults to 10,000 kilobits a second, which is completely wrong, set that to 40,000 or up to 45,000 if you are doing 4K productions. And that's pretty much all you need to do. When you're ready, hit the Add to Render Queue button, hit the Start Render button, and then that will output in your place of choice. And if you right click on it when it's done, it will helpfully tell you how long it takes. You can then open file location and it will take you to your production. Then all you need to do is upload it to YouTube or whatever it is you're trying to do. And that is editing in DaVinci Resolve. I think it's fairly straightforward. I hope this has been nice and clear for you and given you everything you need to sort of go on. Editing is quite simple. It's just a time-consuming process. It's just a case of finding the clips you want, selecting those in and out points by pressing I and O, dragging it where you want to go, and then just cutting it all together with transitions if you want. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that it's been useful for you. Let me know if it has down in the comment section below, and hit the like button if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe for more videos like this, but ultimately videos that I make with this software. So the PC gaming videos, just like all of this stuff. And if you want a grading tutorial, I'm sure I can touch on that as well, or do something advanced. Be really interested to let you really interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.